Oh, and hello, and welcome to Overcome a Mental Health podcast. I'm excited to be here today, and I'm excited to announce our guest, Scott Grace. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm great.
And
Happy to be here, Travis.
before I turn the time over to Scott, I want to read a quick bio of him, and I'm hoping I can do this with a straight face. But let's see how this goes. Warning: Scott Grace, who has been described as a cross between John Denver, Robin Williams, and Dr. Seuss, is wanted by the authorities for creating the piece as well as defying the law of gravity with levity. Contact with Scott is likely to be hazardous to your misery, as he has provoked outbreaks of joy in 4 out of 5 laboratory humans. It is illegal that Scott's work has so threatened to cut into the sales of antidepressants that pharmaceutical companies have offered him millions to retire. Scott gives keynotes using stolen identity, aka the spiritual Dr. Seuss. His feel good viruses on YouTube have infected over 2.5 million people with just 4 of his Seussian videos. Scott has been known to practice life coaching without a license, eluding the police by working on Zoom. He fancies himself an intuitive channel with who smuggles wisdom and guidance over the border from beings he calls spirit guides, who are also not licensed and who have allegedly not filed a tax return in several lifetimes. As a front, Scott does do various legal above the board activities. He has written 4 books in his latest being Mindful Masculinity. Scott also has recorded 9 CDs, remember CDs, of his original music and comedy. He presents as an inspirational guest speaker and singer at churches, nonprofits, schools, and corporate events. As an occasional stand up comedian in the Bay Area, he has shared the stage with Dana Carvey and Robin Williams. But don't be fooled, his rampage of song portraits, custom made, personalized song gifts that horror people for their birthdays, anniversaries, or for no reason at all, have been killing people softly their with their songs since 1987. Authorities would very much like your help in apprehending Scott. Try catching him at www.scottsongs.com or on YouTube or Facebook. And I'd like to now turn the time over to Scott and hear about how we can heal our inner critic.
Wow, that was the first time I've ever heard that. That was great. Thank you. I am pleased to be here with you all. I have had quite a journey in my life with my inner critic, and my intention is to help you shine a light upon it because it's usually in the dark. And that's why it's so painful, because it's not conscious. And when it's subconscious, it it hurts. But when you are conscious of it, you can choose to detach. And because knowledge is power, you can choose to listen to a different voice. So my inner critic was born, so to speak, when I was about 7 years old. I remember I was stealing money from my parents, and I must have been a very angry young man. And they caught me, but they knew it was me. But they told me that they suspected my housekeeper, Eunice, who was like a second mother to me. And they said, "Is there anything you want to tell us, Scott? Because we're about to fire Eunice. We'll give you a few days." And it was the hardest few days of my life. And finally, all this fear and shame, through it all came the 3 words, "I did it." And my parents said, "We're not going to punish you because we see how hard you've been punishing yourself." And that experience plus just many others like it, gave me the idea that if I punish myself enough, I will be safer in this world. My parents, if everybody sees me being hard on myself, then they'll leave me alone and they'll have compassion for me. So the inner critic was born as a survival strategy to help me survive a troubled and sometimes traumatic world, let alone childhood. I got really good at it. I became really good at beating myself up. In fact, I got to the feeling that all the addictions and distractions that were running my life were caused by this main addiction, the addiction to beating myself up. And so I looked around for a 12-step program to help me with that because it was driving me to drink, do drugs, all kinds of sexual and codependency issues. So I thought, let's go to the root cause and deal with that addiction, the addiction to being hard on myself. And I couldn't find any 12-step group that dealt with it. So I started my own. And it was called Critaholism.
I
So
like
I
it.
would get up there and I would speak and I would say, you know, I'm Scott Grace and I'm a critaholic. And I would say my story. I wasn't always a critaholic. I used to be able to enjoy a few harmless judgments of myself and others at parties. But then, as the disease progressed, I started waking up my day and just pouring some straight self-criticism in. I started criticizing myself while I was alone. And one day, I was thinking and driving. And I lived in California at the time. And a policeman pulled me over and he said, do you know how much you were criticizing yourself? I said, no, officer. He said, 84 thoughts per hour. And I said, oh my God. He said, the limit is 65 here in California. I'm going to have to write you up. Oh, I said, please don't. So I had to go to court, and the judge let me be my own prosecuting attorney because he knew I had so much experience in that role. So I won my case. I was found guilty. And yet it was my first offense. So the judge let me off and sent me to a hospital that specialized in the treatment of what he suspected I had, which was chronic critique syndrome. So the doctors examined me and they were blunt. They said, you're in critical condition. And if you don't learn to be more gentle with yourself, by the time you're in your 40s, you might have a cardiac arrest. And that's when I became committed to resting my critic for my mental health. And yes, that was tongue in cheek. But I've written a lovely bunch of songs to help heal the inner critic, to soften it, to relax it. And I'll share with you part of one.
Okay.
Once I thought by now I'd be Mr. Functionality, perfect and complete in every way. I still get lost and then get found as I walk this sacred stumbling ground. I need to reassure me I'm okay. I sometimes fumble in the dirt. I have a heart that can feel hurt. So I hear a voice of wisdom say, handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. There's a judge inside who's sometimes strong, convinced I'm doing my whole life wrong. So quick to rise up to my prosecution. But as I grow, it's getting clear the judge is just a voice of fear. Gentleness, my only real solution. For how can the child inside feel safe when I'm trying to whip myself in shape? There must be a gentler way to grow. The petals of my heart open in a loving self-environment. A flower grows and blooms when it's given the room. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there.
Love it. Love it. I love how you use music to help people heal.
Yeah. Yeah, and to help myself heal, primarily I write songs for myself, and then lo and behold, other people are like me and are working with the same issues.
Yeah, it's
My guitar almost fell. I
nope.
found got it.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me, like uh, how healing music is.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So you got to give me something to chew on here. I'm afraid of silence.
I am too. I'm pulling up my notes really quick. I apologize. I had them here, and then I opened up something to read your bio, and then so they disappeared from my.
I've got it. I got it. I'm on a roll. So the inner critic is a voice of fear. That's what the song just said. So one of my tools, one of the things that works for me when I find myself in critical condition, when I'm, disapproving and beating up on myself for the choices or just, feeling blah, is I I dialogue with the inner critic and I say, I'm curious, what are you worried about or afraid of? And over the years, I've developed a relationship. So, critic might say, I'm afraid you're not going to make enough money. I'm afraid if you don't apply yourself, you're you're just not going to be happy. I'm afraid that it has to be done really soon, that you're way out of time. I'm afraid that you're going to die and God's going to say, you better go back. You didn't learn your lessons. It goes on and on. But,
Yeah.
and then I listen and I say, well, thank you. And what do you want? Like, do you want me to be happy? Yes, I want you to be happy. So the inner critic is like a life coach that is on the sidelines of your life, and it learned how to support you and cheer you on by people who were afraid. And so it's developed a strategy of encouraging you by making you afraid, by making you feel bad.
Yeah, and this speaks volumes to like my inner critic is definitely like to me is speaking about my anxiety, which is something I deal with every single day. And it's
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing that you were just saying. It's like, am I good enough? Am I, do you want me to do more, God? Do you want me to, like, am I going to make it past today? Um, so what, like, go off of kind of like people who feel like they're not good enough. What do you say to those people?
May I speak personally to you, Travis?
You sure can.
Okay. Yeah, because you're in the room, I can connect with you. First of all, what I'm sensing is that it's a lifelong journey. And it's we all come in with life lessons and that are going to be uh, worked with for most, if not all, of our life. And we live in a society that makes us think, oh, let me snap my fingers, pop an affirmation, get on a meditation cushion, and in a few months I'll be confident and clear and feel much better about myself and never
Yep.
procrastinate or whatever. And and really, wow, what a crock. The standards that we were taught to hold ourselves to are impossible, unrealistic, and the inner critic comes along with a whipping stick and says, "You're not doing it. You're not living up to the standards." So one thing I would say is question your standards. Who gave you those standards? What is their purpose? Are they true and real for you, or do they come from the heart? And give yourself a lot of patience, because that not good enough voice is a voice of fear. And it's also the voice of maybe parents and teachers and the whole vibe of the culture. Even the advertising industry takes advantage of, you're not enough, but you'll feel enough when you buy our product. So let's just see what comes out with the guitar. Every day you deal with anxiety and mental patterns you wish you were free of. Yet you get up and you do your best, fantasizing about being a success, as if God is displeased. That just ain't the truth. You've been loved and protected ever since your youth. It's gonna be alright. In fact, it already is. It's just for you to learn to self-forgive. It's a lifetime of practicing. It's how you find your angel wings. Smile upon yourself and forgive.
I think too that's the hardest part. It's you talk in that song about forgiving yourself,
Yes.
and that doesn't always come too easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an old habit that needs a new habit.
And another thing I want to touch base on what you said was when you were talking about the self affirmations and stuff. We can be told to repeat them in our head all the time, but until we really actually subconsciously learn how to like catch us in our worst moments, like they don't help. At least not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Screw those affirmations. When I'm down to a certain level of self pity, it's not affirmations that help. It's for me, it's a good cry. Uh, Maybe singing, dancing, asking for love, asking for a hug, um, telling people I care about. I have temporarily forgotten who I am. Could you remind me? What do you see when you look into my eyes?
Yeah, that's really
That's a
good.
yeah, yeah,
And um, I think it's important to have a good cry. For me, it's a lot of I like to surround myself with people that will listen to me. And sometimes I don't
yeah,
always want them to say anything.
yeah,
There's times I do, but I guess it depends on the moment. But I think someone to sit there, you know what? How are you really feeling? Like, what's going on in your mind? So, but
yeah,
I enjoyed the good cry as well.
yeah. There's a work I do online called Authentic Relating, and it's a tribe of people all over the world, and we practice deep listening, deep authentic sharing, and no fixing, and that's beautiful stuff. I feel closer to some of these people I've met online than I do with people in my life in the flesh, and it's because of this practice of really taking each other in and not judging and not fixing.
Can you dive in a little bit more on what you mean by like not fixing? Like, just kind of
Yeah.
the meaning behind
Well,
it and what you.
okay. Well, when people share something, they want something back. And we come from a culture that doesn't really teach people how to be self-aware around this. So I teach, if somebody says, I want to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. What cap, I would say, what would you like from me? What would you like me to put on my just listen cap? Or do you want me to problem solve with you? Do you want my feedback? What are you looking for? So they get conscious of what they're wanting in return. I don't like it when people just vent. I like
Yeah,
I get turned off by that. But when they say, I have some feelings and I'd love to be heard. Do you have a moment to hear me? That's that that's
it's
much
different.
much
Yeah.
easier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So fixing is is often out of really beautiful intentions, caring, and very very often it's a man in this position, and it's a woman who is talking to him, just wanting his caring, his empathy, his presence. And he says, well, have you gone to that chiropractor? Or, wait, I'll fix that. And she just doesn't feel heard. Sometimes his desire to fix comes from the insecurity and anxiety that he's feeling because he doesn't know how to hold space for emotions, his emotions or hers. And if I don't let myself be sad or mad or anxious, if I don't connect empathically to myself, I'm not going to really be able to listen to anyone else. And part of the way that I deflect listening is by trying to fix or judge.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like in situations like that, when somebody like tries to fix me, I feel like it doesn't take care of the real situation at hand. Like I want it to.
Yeah. 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 And so part of it is the responsibility of the one who's talking. It to get into the habit of saying what I would love for you to do right now is just listen, maybe make some nonverbal noises like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
Hmm.
But to really give specific, detailed GPS type of instructions on what you want back from the person.
Yeah, makes sense. Being basically just being more vocal about what you're expecting,
Indeed.
which is, yeah, I haven't always been good with that, but um, throughout my marriage, I've been learning. I should say, especially my marriage, I haven't been always good at that, but now I'm learning to do a lot better.
Good for you. Yeah, that's the best training ground in town, an intimate relationship. Yeah. So what I've been doing lately is writing down any thought that has the energy of should in it. I have like a should journal.
Okay.
And every time I feel this tension and I know that I'm telling myself I should do this differently, or I should get started on that, or I should clean the house, I write it down. And I look at my list. And this is why my latest book is called Mindful Masculinity, a book for men and the women who love them. Because mindfulness, let's say awareness of what I'm thinking, is illuminating, and it frees me to laugh at what I've been thinking, to change what I'm thinking, to detach from the emotional reactions from what I'm thinking. So I think it's a good idea to see if you're just like full of shoulds, where did those shoulds come from? Did they come from parents, culture, society, your own? What? It doesn't matter really. You don't have to analyze them, but just to be able to see them. And it occurred to me that I'm dominated. My thoughts are dominated by should thinking. So
Yeah.
what do I do? One of my defense mechanisms and one of my gifts is to bring humor to something really hard and painful.
Yeah.
So I have this. You're on the verge of wanting to say something.
Yeah,
I'll
I
let you
was just gonna say the humor thing. It's for me because I'm a very sarcastic, smart alecky person. If you really get to know me,
Yeah,
and I find the humor thing being a blessing and a curse at the same time.
yeah,
I I can go in and laugh at anything, but there's moments where I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have said that, and I need to learn to respond to that type of situation differently.
sure. Yeah. So I wrote a bunch of songs and a bunch of poems as my altered ego, the spiritual Dr. Seuss. And many of them deal with this critical voice. So let me lay one on you, or at least part of
Okay.
it. So, my critic travels with me on this earth and is my companion for worser or worse. It pretends it's my friend, my bestest amigo, and it pours on the guilt. That's the drink of my ego. It's there to protect me, to help me be strong. So it has to remind me I'm doing it wrong. I'm weak and I'm lazy and I don't have a clue. That's my drill sergeant critic trying to motivate me. My critic wants me to be all I can be, so it gives me these pep talks all day and for free. Oh, the places I go and the guilt trips I travel, as the critic plays judge and bangs down on its gavel. But I always can get some relief from my shame by projecting it onto the others I blame. For that is my critic at its beastiest best. It nurses its grievances close to its chest. Republicans, liberals, your parents, my ex, the world is just teeming with folks to correct. If only those fools could conform to my ways, I could get on with life without further delays. Now, this is a 6-minute poem. It doesn't end there, but I think I'll stop for the purpose of our podcast.
Yeah.
It does have a happy ending.
That's- and how did you come up with that alter ego?
I had been reading Dr. Seuss to my daughter. She was 2 years old, and one night I read her one of his books, tucked her in, and then I couldn't get his voice and his rhyming scheme, his style out of my head. And I sat with that and I moved around a couple of days. Just everything was like Dr. Seuss. I'm glad I trusted myself to know that it was a good thing because
Hmm.
I could have ended up in a hospital. So I went to the computer one night and because I was noticing that this voice was very positive and cheerful and had a lot of wisdom. So I started writing and took about 3 months for the first poem to be done. And then there came five more. So right now I have a body of work uh, that's in a book called "Oh, the
Oh,
Places Your
please.
Ego Will Go," and I put a bunch of it in my latest book, Mindful Masculinity. So the spiritual Dr. Seuss is a big part of what I do and how I help people.
That's really cool. It's hard to kind of decipher like those good ideas from the bad ones, and I'm glad that you moved forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some people would say there's no such thing as a bad idea.
Yeah, it's true.
Thomas said it. Miles Davis said in jazz there are no wrong notes, and Thomas Edison said somebody asked him, you failed 1999 times to create a light bulb. What kept you going? And he said, I didn't fail. I, I didn't fail. I was, I forgot what he said, building, I was building a light bulb, like each one helped me learn how to get it right.
Yeah,
So we're all works in progress.
yeah. And if he wouldn't have done that, where would we be with the light bulb now? Like, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trusting yourself and
Yeah.
uh,
Trusting yourself. I don't do that easily.
neither,
When I said there are lessons that we learn for a lifetime, that's one of them for me. That is definitely one of them. It's
yeah,
yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm the same way. I don't trust myself a lot. So this podcast idea I've been sitting on for probably over a year now, and I've just never been like, you know what? Like it's always been a thought like I don't trust myself to do it. I don't know if it's gonna get people to view it. Like
Hey,
I
you
don't know
just
how I'm gonna.
rhymed. I don't know if I can do it. Will people come to view it? And when they
It
let
was
it go,
totally
well,
yeah,
go ahead, keep going.
totally
I'm on a
totally
roll.
totally unintentional. Um, but that stopped me for a long time because I didn't know how to even go about it. And I feel like every time I got in front of a microphone, it was like I felt this like imposter syndrome coming over me.
Yes. Yes.
Like, okay, I'm not good enough to even do this. But now I'm here and I'm trying it, and um,
And you're nailing it.
I'm hoping to nail it.
Oh,
I
you're
think.
nailing it. You embody courage because you're insecure and you're doing it anyway. And
Hmm.
think of how many people could be empowered and inspired by you because most people who are insecure and deal with anxiety don't do what you're doing.
Yeah, that's
Feeling fear and doing something anyway is the essence of courage.
and that's exactly what I'm hoping to do is find those few people to that I can inspire and get them to move past any struggles that they're dealing with and maybe just open up about themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you've earned the right to create safety for troubled people because of what you've been through, what you're doing here on this podcast. You're ready.
Let's see. Uh, so you mentioned in your bio, it mentions that you do stand up. Do you still do stand up to this day?
Yeah. In fact, I have a gig tomorrow night. I live in Mexico, and it's just every once in a while I do professional stand up. It's not a major part of my life.
And I just have to ask you. Uh, you said it says you shared the stage with Robin Williams and Dana Carvey. Did you? I would just be curious. Did you get to meet either of them? I'd just be curious, honestly, to know. I know this is a little bit off subject. What it was, if you met Robin Williams, what it was like, just because I just think his character
I I
itself.
I, I was in the green room. That's this backstage,
Yeah,
and and I met him, and we shook hands. He looked at me very very quickly, and then looked down, and spoke about having just gotten back from Iraq, and uh, I didn't feel like there was any room for connection.
yeah,
He seemed not just humble, but kind of very self critical, and didn't know how to be himself when he wasn't joking around. That's my assessment. Many
yeah,
comedians, myself included, are fueled by self hatred.
yeah. And obviously, with Robin Williams, we it's pretty much been said that that was a lot of the case was the self hatred.
Yeah, but look what he did with
Oh, I know.
it.
Still, to this
Yeah,
day, he's one of the like his comedy stuff is just I love it.
yeah, and of course his serious acting.
Hmm.
He did
You
just
could do it
such.
all.
Yeah, yeah.
You could do it all. Where was that one that? Okay, where had it written down? Okay, this is a good one that I took off of something of yours. So going back on track here. Sorry, I kind of go off on tangents sometimes. But whereas we were talking about the inner critic, and sometimes we don't like what the inner critic has to say. Like how do we just get that inner critic to shut up and stop bothering us?
Well, that's one technique. Hasn't worked very well for me. Uh, since the inner critic is fear, it's just a voice of fear. There's got to be a exploration of, wow, what am I afraid of? And another part of me needs to be comforting the inner child that is the one trembling because of what the inner critic is saying, and also like empathizing with the inner critic. Hey, you're being really really loud, and it's really hurting my feelings. What are you trying to do? Why are you doing this? It hurts. Maybe that's not your intention, but I want you to really just chill. I need encouragement, not discouragement. And this is a voice that is the reparenting that we all need to do. And the parent inside that is being developed by being kind and gentle and forgiving. These are lifelong practices. For some people, it might work to say, shut up in there. Just shut the fuck up. You are not my savior. You are not my minister. You are not my daddy. You are nothing. Go into a corner. Suck your thumb. Because for some of us, the inner critic is like a bully. And so standing up to the bully can be helpful. I don't want you to talk to me like that. That is not helpful. You got something to say, you say it with kindness.
Yeah.
And
And
if you can learn to be encouraging, your encouraging positive self-talk is going to support me in being more courageous. But this discouraging critical voice is shutting me down. It doesn't motivate me.
yeah, and I've been in some, I wouldn't call it intense therapy, but it's not. So I've been going to some therapy sessions, and the other not too long ago, I think it was last week, we were speaking of kind of like this self talk stuff, and he said the therapist said the key to it is to subconsciously like stop, and it's not always easy to do because you're usually generally the person, everybody's like the general person is like harsh on themselves, thinking negative thoughts. And it's not easy to get those words of encouragement until you learn to subconsciously stop and be like, you know what? That inner critic is being negative right now. Like I need to push that thought away and bring on something positive. And um, it's I've actually found myself now like stopping and thinking like when something bad's happening and or I'm telling myself like, you know what, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And subconsciously like thinking, okay, that was a bad thought, like I'm gonna bring something better in. But it's really
Good.
paying attention to
Intentional. You're being intentional with your thinking. That's great. That's great. And with my clients, I also use tapping, EFT. Have you heard of it? Emotional freedom technique.
I
You
don't think
tap.
so.
Whoa.
That's one that I've never heard of. Yeah.
Yeah. You tap on certain Chinese meridian points, and it can really relieve physical pain. But it's called the emotional freedom technique because it was created to help Iraqi veterans when they came home from the
Okay.
war. It helps with PTSD, anxiety, major trauma, and you could use it to create higher self esteem. So the purpose of well, the first part of it is you validate the negative thoughts or
Okay.
feelings. Even though a part of me thinks I suck, I choose to accept myself anyway. You want to do this with me?
Yeah.
Just tap where I tap. Tap where I tap. So even though part of me thinks I'm doing a really bad job being me, why don't you say those words? Repeat them out loud.
Even though part of me thinks I'm doing a really bad job at being me,
I love and accept myself anyway,
I love and accept myself anyway.
even though I have a lot of anxiety.
Even though I have a lot of anxiety,
I'm learning to soothe myself
I'm learning to soothe myself
and not let anxiety run my life.
and not let anxiety run my life.
Even though I have self doubt,
Even though I have self doubt,
I'm open to this adventure
I'm open to this adventure
of moving forward
of moving forward
one step at a time,
one step at a time,
right through the fears and doubts.
right through the fears and doubts.
Yeah. And tapping on the side of the eye here, all this fear and doubt.
All this fear and doubt,
Side of the eye, all this self criticism.
all this self criticism.
Keep looking at me, kid, because I want you to see where I'm tapping under the eye.
You're okay right there.
Yeah. So part of me is just pushing and pushing myself and trying to force me to do better and be better.
Trying to force me to do better and be better.
Push, push, push.
Push, push, push.
And using negative judgments to try to motivate me.
And using negative judgments to try to motivate me. Are you just
Like,
tapping on your chest there? Is that what
yeah,
it
yeah,
is?
exactly. And then the next part is 4 inches below the armpit on the side of the arm. All of this self judgment.
All of this self judgment.
I see it. Top of the
I,
head.
I see it.
I see you.
I see you.
You're not in the darkness anymore.
You're not in the darkness anymore.
And I can see that it's hurting my feelings.
And I can see it's hurting my feelings.
You, inner critic, are hurting my feelings.
You, inner critic, are hurting my feelings.
I deserve kindness.
I deserve kindness
Just for being who I am.
just for being who I am.
And I choose more kindness each day.
And I choose more kindness each day.
Every time I get conscious that I'm thinking negative thoughts,
Every time I get conscious I'm thinking negative thoughts,
I've got a few positive ones up my sleeve.
I've got a few positive ones up my sleeve.
And I'm exchanging them,
And I'm exchanging them,
putting a smile on my face.
putting a smile on my face.
If I have to fake it, that's fine.
If I have to fake it, that's fine.
I'm on the road to trusting myself.
I'm on the road to trusting myself.
And I'm having a blast
And I'm having a blast
building my podcast
building my podcast
and telling my critic to kiss my ass.
and telling my critic to kiss my ass.
You go now. You're not needed here.
You go now, you're not needed here.
I'm building this podcast with love, not fear.
I'm building this podcast with love, not fear.
And simply because I have the courage to do it,
And simply because I have the courage to do it,
I'm a success, and there's nothing more to it.
I'm a success and there's nothing more to it.
I'm a success no matter what I think,
I'm a success no matter what I think.
because I'm God's creation.
Because I'm God's creation.
And what God makes don't stink.
And what God makes don't stink.
You know, God did not make a mistake in me.
You know, God did not make a mistake in me.
So I'm learning to see myself innocently
So I'm learning to see myself innocently
and really have my back with my thoughts,
and really have my back with my thoughts.
letting go of the guilt and the crap I've been taught.
Letting go of the guilt and the crap I've been taught.
All the shoulds, all the have-tos, and all of the oughts.
All the shoulds, all the have-tos, and all the oughts.
They're just lies that somewhere along the line I bought.
They're just lies somewhere along the line I bought.
I bought them, but now I'm bringing them back.
I bought them, but now I'm bringing them back.
Overnight delivery, Amazon, take them back.
Overnight delivery, Amazon, take them back.
Yeah, because I'm here being me and I'm good enough.
Because I'm here being me and I'm good enough.
I've got everything I need and I've got all the right stuff.
I've got everything I need. I've got all the right stuff.
Sure, there are times that are going to be tough.
Sure, there are times that are going to be tough.
But I'm moving the needle towards more and more trust.
But I'm moving the needle towards more and more trust.
I'm learning to trust myself.
I'm learning to trust myself.
Every day, a little more.
Every day, a little more.
Just like I've learned to walk,
Just like I've learned to walk.
now I'm learning to soar
Now I'm learning to soar
in body, mind, and spirit.
in body, mind, and spirit.
Nice deep breath, Travis. I feel better. Do you feel any
Yeah,
difference?
yeah.
Yeah.
I can see what the tapping does. Like it's yeah. It's like
It
a
reduces cortisol by between 30 and 40%. So even if you just used it without the words,
words.
it
Yeah,
actually can be really helpful. But when you use it with affirmations and the way we just did it, it's a superpower in my life.
yeah. It's almost like I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. It's almost like I feel like when the tapping and you're saying the self affirmations, like it's like you're almost embedding them, making them more than just a thought. I
Yes.
hope I got my point across there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're energetically really like planting the seeds of these thoughts
Mm-hmm.
into your subconscious, into your body, like where you can viscerally start feeling better. And when I do this with my clients, I record the tapping and then I usually improvise a song. And these these are powerful tools that go beyond simple affirmations.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this type of thing will bring the listeners a lot of like maybe hopefully something that they didn't know because I that was one that
Yes.
I've never heard of.
Yeah. Yeah. I have tapping videos on my YouTube channel. I even have them on my website, some of them. Uh, and again, like when I work with people, we always end with tapping, or even sometimes start out with tapping if they're in a
Yeah,
crisis.
in a crisis
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Uh, I honestly don't have too much else. Did you have anything else that you wanted to bring up to the listeners today?
I don't like the fact that anxiety is now diagnosed. And when I was growing up, people were nervous and insecure and anxious. There were no pills and there were no diagnoses. It just was a part of life. And now, like, I don't like it when people have a diagnosis and pills to deal with something that in other cultures and maybe in our culture years ago, it's just like, you it's manageable. I think part of what makes it over the top these days is social media and the internet and how much time we spend in front of screens and not out in nature. That's part of it, I think. For me it is. If I don't if I don't get off of the screens and go out in nature, I start to feel a little
Yeah,
cuckoo.
yeah. You made me a thought come to my head. Um, it, the way society is now, it almost makes it seem like it's not okay to be anxious,
Yes.
and it's totally okay. Anxiety, we need to learn how to deal with it, and
Yeah.
it's
So,
and the same thing is not going to work for every single person. You have to
no.
figure out your
Yeah.
own way.
Sometimes anxiety is is my guidance system saying, don't go there. Don't go out to the party. It's like, oh, I got to go to the party. Well, there's a certain level of anxiety. Do I really have to go? Maybe the anxiety is my intuition saying, you need alone time. Don't force yourself.
Yeah, yes. Sometimes my anxiety is just let's not do this, and my wife pulls me and says, "Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this," and I get there, and I'm actually totally fine.
Yay!
Just
Yeah.
need that extra push.
Yeah. So that's it. I want to send people to my website and encourage
Go
people to
for
get
it.
the book. There's a lot of wisdom about the inner critic and about maturing as a man, but mostly it's for women who want to understand men. And it's on Amazon. You can look at it on my website, www.scottsongs.com, SCOTTSONGS.com. As you scroll down the homepage, it shows up, and there's a sample from Audible, and you just click on it, and you're on Amazon, and that's it.
Perfect. Well, Scott, I really appreciate your time and having you on here. I know you'll bring listeners some good vibes and some good,
Yay.
some, what's the word? It just slipped out of my mouth. It's Saturday. I'm thinking too hard, maybe. Uh, well, you'll bring them a lot of good stuff. Like, I'm grateful that I was able to find you because I think this has been really fun.
Nice.
And you do bring some good humor. Um, anyways, thank you all for listening. You can find me on Instagram at OvercomePod. And yeah, everyone have a great day.
Yeah.